this particular Ithaca 37 has probably had more love put in it than any Ithaca that I've ever seen. This isn't the first one I've restored. It's from 1942, so very well could have been used by law enforcement or, in World War II. A lot of times they weren't marked, would still have the duck scenes, especially in times of need or if, departments would end up purchasing them. And I'm suspicious this one wasn't, because of the barrel length is shorter than is normal, but the front sight elevator, if it was done aftermarket, it was done by someone who very much knew what they were doing, which generally isn't the case. So I kind of think this one probably had some sort of a government use at some point, not sure, but it is a 1942 serial number range. And it was in really rough shape, as you would imagine any gun like that would be. And I've always loved Ithaca 37s. I've owned several. This is old enough to be a slam fire, and of course we've cleared this gun previous to the video, but just to demonstrate, once you've fired the gun, when you actually pump it, it will fire as soon as the pump locks back. So, guys like that a lot of times, reportedly, to be able to just shoot from the hip more or less in close quarters with them, just holding the trigger down. How effective that actually would be, I couldn't really tell you. I struggle to hit anything that way, but it is one of the features of the gun and a potential safety issue if you're not aware of it coming into it, because most shotguns won't do that. But this one was in really rough shape. I really like Ithaca 37, so I just kind of sought out to make a project of it and really put way more work than probably anyone would rationally ever put into an Ithaca 37. Because these aren't particularly uncommon. They would be, for this age to be in this shape it is. So, everything on it has basically been done and restored. The furniture has been updated. I freehand checkered the grip itself with kind of a melding of, I've got the border like an American style often does, but then a borderless in the front, kind of a hybrid between the European and American style checkering. And then I also stippled the grip cap with kind of a cursive I for Ithaca. Just like I said, this one was kind of a hobby labor of love. Instead of, shotguns generally don't have sling studs, but I tend to like them when they do, and I've actually never held an original Ithaca that had sling studs, but they did come from the factory that way sometimes, and I've seen pictures of them. And I couldn't find anyone that actually had the front stud, but judging from pictures, I made one to the best of my understanding of what an original would have been, and machined the barrel to fit it. So it actually has a stud for a sling now, whereas that wouldn't normally be the case. And then in the rear, instead of just a standard, like Uncle Mike's sling stud, I actually did inlet the 2-screw Dakota style sling stud and blended it all in. So, much more tasteful than you're going to see on something like an Ithaca 37 generally, because they've never, there are more deluxe ones, but they're kind of a workhorse gun. And then the way they come, they're mechanically fantastic, because John Moses Browning did a significant amount of the design work on this, and also did John Pedersen. And if you're not familiar with Pedersen, he's really one of the unsung firearms designers. John Moses Browning one time actually referred to him as the best gun designer in the world, which is a lot coming from someone like John Moses Browning. And I think that's referenced in one of Hatcher's books. But anywho, went through mechanically, went through everything. They come with originally some hideous roll stamp checkering, so I didn't want that. I went and did some freehand checkering. And wiped out what was left of the hideous duck scene that's on the side of them. They just kind of roll stamp into them like a lot of guns are, and re-engraved the side of it. I did some accent marks where some of the, there's 3 different types of bluing prep work on this. Some of it is like a 420 straight line, like the slab sides of the receiver, little high polish mirror accent marks that kind of, it'll come off almost like a black pearl when you end up looking at it, just to kind of catch the eye. So like you can see the polish of the tube in contrast with this satin of the barrel and part of the tube there. Really just kind of played around with this one and wanted to make it fancy, and that way I could just leave it in my gun safe and oil it every time I touched it. Another thing I ended up doing is, you know, shells of this era, this gun's so old, they were presuming paper shell, fiber wadding. We don't use paper shells and fiber waddings anymore. We use plastic shells and plastic waddings. That changes some things about what a shotgun barrel needs to be. So barrels this old are, you know, more constricted. So I went through and actually backboard this entire barrel to open it up to a wider diameter and then polished it out for modern shells. And then additionally, the forcing cones on older barrels are very abrupt and short. So I actually went in and lengthened the forcing cone. Presumably anyone who shoots this is, you know, if they did choose to shoot it, which I've kind of more or less just had it put up. I have function checked it, but it's set up for modern shells now, which if you just buy an off the rack old 37, it's not going to be. The action's plenty strong enough. These are extremely strong actions because, you know, Browning loved over-engineering things. And it is threaded for a choke. It was that way when I got it. I'm not sure, again, what all history this thing has been through because it's from the 40s. But like I said, engraved the side, manufactured Ithaca, New York, 1942, because I thought the 42 pedigree was neat, so I wanted that visible on the side of the gun, and then just Ithaca Gun Company on the other side engraved into it. That I find that a lot more tasteful than those hideous duck scenes. So this one's coming up for grabs for Randy for some of his medical expenses. And if you haven't met Randy, he is one of my favorite humans I've ever met. And the fact that he's always so happy and kind to people, while in enough pain as just a resting pain state that if I was to experience it, I think I'd probably like keel over and wouldn't be worth a thing. He just kind of lives that way, and he has for so long. But we got to get Randy a new leg so we can get him back behind a cash register and put him to work. So up for grabs. And, you know, you can support him by buying some raffle tickets for this. There's going to be a second and third prize where ProShots is putting up, I believe, a year and a 6-month membership as secondary prizes. And then also, if you want to just support Randy, there's also his Kickstarter. I think it was a Kickstarter or GoFundMe, but we'll put a link to that somewhere in the video.